Well, hello there, everyone. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Liquid Bucket of Shit. I'm Gutter Trash, and welcome to our terrible podcast.
I mean, you call me, liquid pile of shit. That's not what I am. I'm the guy keeping the shit afloat, is what I am. Um,
Yeah, like you see,
if you,
Liquid Shit allows shit. Gosh damn it! No, we're not getting derailed into this fucking territory
if you
right
listen,
now.
if you listen to the first one, you will know, of course, that this time around it's gone much smoother,
Yeah.
way better than last time round because I actually remembered to actually fucking record. However, this time round, and this is the level of professionalism that we're at, GM has decided not to play the actual game that we've said we're going to cover today.
Yeah, but
For
don't
no
worry.
reason.
The game is both very short and incredibly memorable, so I remember basically all of it. Um, there might be some parts I don't recollect quite as well, but for the most part, everything in it stuck with me, and I really like it. So yeah. All right, we should get into introductions. Hello, my name is Game Maniac 3434. As far as you know.
And I am the Limo maker once again. Obviously, GM is my sub-host. He is, the one that's just below me. If you want to get in contact with the person who runs this podcast, just contact me. The curator, the editor, the guy who does all the research, the guy who actually plays the fucking games.
See, as you can see, he's British, so he has an innate sense of superiority that also is completely undeserved.
And as you can also see, that GM didn't want to play the Stanley Parable because he was afraid he wouldn't beat it because you know what his skills with video games are like.
I beat Cuphead, you bastard.
Oh, did you need like a cheat? Was there a hack? I didn't realize they did
Fuck
easy
you!
mode.
Alright.
Um,
Anyway.
Anywho, before we start, how have you been? How have you been? I haven't actually caught up with you just yet, either. I didn't even catch up with you like before we started recording. How have you been?
I've been good. I saw Blade Runner 2049 a couple of weeks ago. That
Ah,
was fucking
yes.
lovely.
It's a magical movie. It's a movie that just I've seen it twice now, and when it
I've
comes out,
only
I'm
seen
going to
it
buy all the
once,
copies.
but I'm gonna get it on Blu-ray,
Oh,
and then I'm
dude,
gonna watch the original, and then I'm gonna watch this one,
mhm.
just so that I can enjoy it again. I mean, I haven't seen the original to be fair, but
Yeah. I mean,
fucking Blade Runner 2049 is one of the most visually sumptuous fucking movies I've ever seen.
mm,
And I think the guy, one of the cinematographers or something who worked on it is
Roger
has something to do with the
Deakins. Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption.
Roger Deakins has done a lot of stuff. He has never won an Oscar for any of his movies though. So
Yeah, that's why the Oscars are a load of shit, kids.
yeah, pretty much that is one of the reasons why. Because he did Sicario, which I don't know if anyone else has seen, but that movie's visually fucking amazing. I'm gonna have to send you like screenshots of Sicario GM because it's gorgeous to look at. It's amazing to look at. But no,
Yeah,
Roger Deakins is astounding. Best cinematographer, one of the best at least, working today. Um,
yeah. Other than
that, and
that,
obviously, we've
I've
both been
been
playing
good.
Wolfenstein. We've both been playing Wolfenstein as well, which I
Yeah.
really fucking enjoy. I've just reached the televised thing
Hmm.
with BJ, and that is
Yeah.
something.
That's where the game
Wow.
really picks up and just goes
Yeah.
off the rails.
Well,
But
well, the
for
fucking scene before that was really satisfying to me. The
I
sequence before that was real fucking satisfying.
yeah. Honestly, I'd say right after that is kind of where the game starts to flag a little bit for me, unfortunately.
Really.
I'll let you beat it and make your own decisions, but
Mm,
as of right now, I still prefer the New Order. And we
that's
can get
understandable.
into that sometime later. But yeah,
Definitely,
that'll be a
definitely.
fun discussion.
What I will say though is that Wolfenstein: The New Colossus is a game that deserves your money over most other first-person shooters that are out at the moment. It is a game that understands there is an audience for single-player first-person shooters.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll say this: if you liked the New Order, just you're not gonna like this one as much as that one, probably. And if not immediately afterwards, given time, you'll probably chew on the New Order still a bit more. But it's still a good game. It's still a good single player game, and a single player only game at that. And despite its issues, I would say grab it. At whatever price you think is reasonable, as close to full price as you feel comfortable with, is probably what I'd suggest. We should support games like this so we get more shit like this. But Yeah,
Definitely.
just temper your expectations.
Take GM's advice. The man who can't even beat the Stanley Parable. So, onto that, by the way. The Sta- the Stanley Parable is what we're going to be talking about today because we thought, just keep it small scale. GM, what was your first experience when playing the Stanley Parable? Did you go in blind? Because I went in completely blind, not knowing anything about it,
Okay,
and
so
you blew me
now
away because of it.
my first experience with Stanley Parable was I had seen parts of a video of it in its first incarnation, which,
Yep.
in case you don't know, the Stanley Parable was originally just a mod.
Yeah.
I say just a mod, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Quotations.
know. I know.
It started out life as a mod, and it eventually became a full-fledged game. And I went in pretty blind, and I was pretty blown away by the entire
Yeah.
experience. It's a masterclass of a comedy.
If you are someone who wants to write comedy, if you are someone who wants to write video games in general, or if you are someone who is interested in like writing an artsy video, like a walking simulator, as it would be called, the Stanley Parable is the game. It's
Yeah.
like one of the games you just have to play. It's like it's so cemented. The first time I played it, I wasn't expecting to laugh. It's probably the game that came out the same year as I think it was 2011. It was 2011. Came out in 2011. That's the same. That was the
Same
first.
year as Skyrim and Dark
That was yeah.
Souls and
But that was only the
Limbo.
mod though. No, Limbo came out in 2010. Don't be a fool. And this was the modification. It was only the mod like came out in 2011, but the full game didn't come out in 2012. But the thing was like I hadn't laughed that much since playing Portal 2, and it just genuinely got to me. It tickled all my little things, and it also helps, of course, that the narrative is
You
British.
know,
This that gives it both
come to
brownie
think of
points.
it, there are some interesting similarities to
Mm.
Portal in terms of comedic
Yes,
focus.
but that's what we're going to be talking about now. So, obviously, from last week, from last time, whatever. I don't know when the first edit is going to be finished. Whatever, someday in the future for us, someday in the past for you guys. We've decided that the structure of our thing is going to be completely different from what we were doing, just because I feel like the flow is more natural this way. So we're going to talk about the good first. The good about the Stanley Parable, GM. Go on, go for it. How about nail all these good points down first?
All right, so before we get too far into it, I should explain what Stanley Parable is. There's some of you who won't know what it is, maybe.
People who don't like
So
good
first of
games,
all,
that's fine.
if you don't know what the Stanley Parable is, we're going to probably get pretty in depth into it.
Very
I'd really
spoilery.
suggest you go play the Stanley Parable first,
Yeah,
so you kind of go in blind and fresh on that. But
definitely.
regardless, the Stanley Parable is a and finger quotes walking simulator.
Yeah.
And basically, you walk along as a narrator, basically innocuously describes you following a path. Now, what's interesting about the Stanley Parable,
You could say it's the story of a man named Stanley.
it's a story about a man named Stanley.
It is, yes.
It's basically where the interesting parts come in is when you diverge from that path, the narrator reacts to it, and it basically there's several branching paths and comedic lines and writings that are fucking hilarious, and they comment a lot on a game design, player agency, and that sort of high level shit. It's a very good game, and it's like I mean, you could argue it doesn't have a failure, whatever. I don't conform to such restrictions because I think a game can really take many forms, and the Stanley Parable engages the player. That's what matters. It isn't like Dear Esther where you wander around and it babbles at you while you do nothing. It's a game that like engages and
Yeah.
reacts to you
Yeah.
and is
Yeah.
aware of you as a player.
That's completely it. It is a game unlike any other game, and it wouldn't be able to exist in any other medium. And I think that's something that, much like Limbo, really kind of cements it as a touchstone in video games.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, when I went into it, as I was going through the motions, I completely forgot that there was no like actual interactive. Well, you do interact with things quite a bit actually. I'll get into the endings in a bit, but there isn't any like full on. I had this discussion with someone today and said there is more to games than like enemies / combat to make gameplay, and it's how you interact with the world or how you affect the world that you're in, and Stanley, I completely forgot there was like no combat or no enemies or anything like that. I completely just forgot about it because it just swept me up in this entire. I don't want to say faux pretentiousness because it pretends to, like it's almost like the narrator himself comes across as very pompous and very pretentious, but the game itself isn't because it makes fun of the idea of being a pretentious video game player or video game designer. It pokes fun at so many different things all at once, and most of the time it would fail to be good, but the writing is so strong and the timing is so strong that it just works, and it astounds me that it works because I am a guy who loves solid scripts, and I don't get how anyone would even fucking approach to make this thing. Like, I have to tip my hats to both the writers in this. It's incredible.
It's an amazing effort of writing and storytelling.
To this day, even when I replayed it, so I've played this game over the course of a few days now, and more than GM, by the way. I played a lot more than GM has. He hasn't even bothered to watch anyone else play it, so it's not even like he could be, on the way home, just have it just playing around him. He's not fucking bothered with any of that shit. No, he's gone in completely without even.
Okay,
he's gone off memory alone.
Here's the thing. I have a memory for things that stick with me strong enough, and the Stanley Parable really stuck with me. I remember so much of it off the top of my head, and that's telling to me. That says a lot about the quality of the Stanley
He remembers
Parable.
a lot of games that he can't beat, which is why he remembers a lot of games. It's just what he does. It's just what he does.
See, this is what I have to suffer through. This is my
you don't suffer with me. I'm just the one who's played the video game, and you have not. I'm the one who's been professional. It's fine.
It's like I'm Prometheus. And Limo is the fucking eagle that rips out my guts every day.
I was going to say, you're right. You are a pretty shitty movie. you're pretty shit, GM.
I opened myself up to that. Regardless,
regardless,
it's a really amazing,
really game. Fucking good. That's the thing, though. Like, would you like? It's something I've debated a lot, and I don't know. Some people don't class it as a game.
It's a game.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That's my argument. I'm like, no, shut the fuck up. It's a game. Don't start this argument again.
Yeah. See, so those who are listening to the second episode, thank you for somehow bearing with us through our first episode, and we're eventually gonna get maybe a third person to see if we can get a little bit more dissent and discussion, but
as it stands, you got to deal with us. Good luck with your lives.
Yeah, so we'll be coming to abduct one of you shortly, but yeah. So, gosh. Yeah.
So yeah, no. What's the thing that you like the most about it? Would you say? What is the thing that, like, out of everything that there is? Because obviously you say it's stuck with you. What would you say sticks with you the most?
Okay, this is gonna sound a little bit weird, but well, maybe it's not. The narrator's voice. I think if this game had a worse narrator, the game wouldn't work nearly as well. But it has one of the best narrators I've ever heard. And he has such a gravitas and like range to his voice that you can feel like hatred towards him. You can just kind of feel indifference towards him, which is what you feel first. You can feel sympathy. You can feel really bad for him. And he's he just manages to convey all of that pretty well through what he's saying, which is obviously the writing and his voice. Like, without this narrator, I don't think this game would be nearly, well, I shouldn't say nearly, but I don't think this game would work as well without such a strong narrator.
Yes. Like you say, you do feel there are quite a few moments or endings where I do genuinely feel bad for the guy. Like, I'm genuinely like, oh my god, I put you through so much shit. I'm so sorry. Like, do you want to just let me just make you a cup of tea? I'll look after you. It's fine. Let's just get you home and we'll take care of you and put you into bed. That's all I want to do to you. But no, he is honestly one of the best narrators I've ever heard. Kevin Brighting is a man who I'm not too familiar with his other work. But his work in this is fucking standing. It is a performance for the ages of video games because it is just that damn good. Without his work, without him being as good as he is, the game wouldn't work.
Now, Limo, I need an excuse to drink some more kombucha. Why don't you tell me
Can you see
what
this?
you
Like,
like most
fucking,
about the game?
you know that rule number one on a podcast is you shouldn't be drinking, right? You know that, right?
It's alright, kombucha is an alcoholic.
No. As in, you shouldn't be
We'll
drinking in
wait until
general.
episode 3 to get into alcohol.
Do you fucking realize how much the editing of the first fucking episode is just because of our ums and our likes and our buts and our let alone with you fucking sipping on shit. Right. Anyway, the thing that I really liked about the Stanley Parable, getting away, you fucking drink your kombucha, you dirty bastard, was definitely the way it presented itself, because at first it's very unassuming, and at first I literally so what astounds me is, like I said, the way it presents itself, but the fact that each choice you make is so effective to the world, and every time you make a new decision it leads to something else or something new or something fresh. Even if it's a sort of play on something that you've seen before, it still does it completely differently. So if you go so something that may amaze me is that if you go the way the narrator tells you to go, you turn off the machine and you go out, that actually tells its own self-contained little story, and it's quite a decent one. Like, it's quite an artistic one. Specifically, the idea of Stanley being happy, because that's both the first phrase of the cold, like the first real like hammered home phrase of the cold open to the game, but it's also the last phrase used of that ending. But then if you go any other route, it has its own narrative that will either break the fourth wall or works in its own little way. The one with the wife is the one that kind of terrified me. Like, I actually, that one actually sort of like unsettled me a lot, because of it turns into like a quasi horror game, and it really started to fuck with me.
It's kind of eerie, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
like it a
real
lot.
eerie.
I
Yeah.
especially like how you can negate the entire impact of the scene just by
Oh yes, yeah,
just
just
by
by pulling
doing
the
one
plug.
little thing.
Yeah, just by pulling the plug. That's amazing to me. I love that so much. That ending itself is really fucked, but I love it.
And the narrator even reacts to it. He's like, "Wait, what the fuck did you do?"
It's like, you just made a wrong
It's
decision. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you could make a. And then what I love about it as well is when you make decisions like that and you hear him flipping through his notes. That's something that gets me every time, because it's just like he has no idea. Because it's genuinely presented so well that it is like you've got this guy sitting next to you telling you what to do.
I think the most telling compliment this game is gonna get in this entire thing is the fact that literally just thinking about the scenario that it puts you in and how you can like completely deflate it is making us just laugh from the memory of it.
Definitely. It's something truly special when it can deliver jokes so freely, since it flows so continuously, and the dialogue is always sharp and it's always interesting. And I could genuinely listen if they had done this entire thing and I didn't even play. Like, I don't even mind. So I've actually watched. So while I've been like sort of while I've been trying to do some work for school, I have been watching other people play it, and it's still interesting because the script is so sharp that you don't care who's playing it. It's still entertaining.
And actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a
You do it
play
anyway,
on
it's fine.
that, which I fucking love. There's a trailer for the game
I know
that's
exactly
of
what
a
you're
Let's
talking about,
Player,
yeah.
and it's him slowly going insane as he plays a different version of the game, and it's fucking brilliant.
The game is just so, everything surrounding it is so clever, and like if you liked this, I can tell you now, GM, you will really like the beginner's guide.
Yeah, I haven't played that yet, so that's gonna be fun.
Don't look up anything about it though. Just don't do it to yourself. Go in like you did with this. Go in completely blind, because it will give you the same sort of, not the same sort of experience. It's not quite funny, but I know that it will kind of resonate with you quite well.
Yeah, I've been spoiled a little bit on the concept
I'm saying no
and
more
stuff
than
behind
that.
it.
Have you?
But yeah.
Have you? Yeah. Yeah. Have you had the ending spoiled for you? Because that's the big thing. That is kind of
No.
the big. No. Well, then, in which case, keep it that way. Just play it as soon as you can, and yeah.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the Stanley Parable. Back to the game that we're meant to be talking about before I got completely fucking sidelined about my hyperactivity around someone who can make amazing scripts like Davey Reedon. Davey Reedon wasn't the only writer. William Pugh was as well, and he helped Reedon sort of design the game. If anything, Pugh was more of the designer than Reedon was, whereas Reedon was more of the writer than Pugh was. But that's not to say that they both couldn't do the other things together like really well. But Reedon himself is obviously, because he was like sort of the writer behind the mod on its own, you can really tell that this is kind of his baby. So when I sort of look at the way he writes, it impresses me to no end. And it's the similar sort of effect that Pulp Fiction must have had in the cinema space, where it, not necessarily to like the terms of impact, I'm not saying that Stanley Parable is comparable to like Pulp Fiction, to all of those people who are probably writing and bashing their heads on the keyboard right now.
You know, I'd say fuck those people.
But I am saying that in terms of script writing, in terms of screenwriting, Pulp Fiction is written in a way to not give a shit about standard storytelling structure or standard script writing structure. People sit in offices trying to learn how to write scripts. They are sat in schools trying to be taught how to mechanically turn out a script. And Tarantino wrote one that made it look easy and made it look flowing because he ignored almost every single rule that was given to him. The Stanley Parable does the same. It ignores everything. It ignores absolutely everything that goes into making a like quote unquote cohesive narrative, even though the narratives themselves are cohesive. The game itself doesn't necessarily have like a full-blown endpoint because you just load straight back up into it. But it doesn't care because that's the whole point of the game.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, it kind
me.
of plays on how games, like inherently, certain games have lots of divergence. Like where you're playing Skyrim.
Yes.
You gotta stop the soul-eating dragon, but look, someone needs to find the
Yes.
dog.
It's also I just feel like Reading himself, obviously, well, and Pew too. They both definitely understand like humans themselves, because when you're playing, it's such a subtle thing, but like just having an open door on your left, or knowing you can turn computers off, or knowing that there's like a door that you can jiggle, or knowing that there's like you like just seeing a ramp, like so when you're on the lift being taken across the cargo lift, seeing the walkway below you and thinking, could I land on that? And then it's just something as simple as that allows...
Or bashing your body against different objects in the initial room, and finding that you can climb one of them.
Yes, it's like stuff like that just screams of someone who gets humans themselves, like how we would, like how drawn we are to not doing what we're told. And you know, especially when you've got the narrator himself, who like, and I'm not gonna defend anyone here, like us British people, when you sound like that, you sound pompous, you sound bossy, and I can speak from experience here when it comes to that sort of thing. You sound like you're trying to tell someone, not ask or politely sort of coerce, but actually demand that someone do something, even though you might be speaking in a very calm voice. Shut up, GM. Even though you might be speaking in a very calm voice, you can sound like you're telling someone
very
what to
commanding
do.
Language.
Yes, and
well, no, language and accent.
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially if you have a grasp of it, like Brighting does, and especially if you can enunciate like he does.
I have to imagine the picking of someone with that type of accent. It's not just a British accent. It's the way the British accent is brought across and presented.
Yes.
That makes it work so well. It's the way he talks, the imperious nature
definitely.
of someone when he's talking.
Yeah, it's hard for me to sort of describe, but like it appeals to that defiance of human nature in such a simple way, just by saying, you know, do you want to work on this? We need you to do this. And just by having him just talk all the way through, it automatically makes you want to do the opposite of what he says, just because you can. And that's kind of... Oh, God, my voice is going. But that's kind
of... Should have been drinking kombucha, bitch.
No, I'm not drinking kombucha, how dare you. But that is, you know, that is part and parcel of the experience. Part and parcel of the experience is going, no, fuck you, Dad, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, it takes advantage also of almost all game players have an inherent small desire to kind of see what they can get away with, to poke at the edges and say, the game says to do this, but what if I do this?
Yes.
And it's... A lot of good games will take advantage of that nature, and sometimes they'll hide a little Easter egg. Like in Doom 2016,
Yeah.
You've got a straightforward objective. Maybe you go look around a
Yeah.
corner and you find a hidden rocket launcher or something. In this one, I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's like taking advantage of that explorative part of our brain, the defining part of your brain, and also the curious one. That's just like, what's over there? What's going on
Yeah.
over there?
It's also the use of colour, I've noticed. The use of colour scheme in the game. Obviously, there's only so much you can do with a source engine when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah. Generally, uh, generally, I think. Well, I don't want to get too much into the bad. I'd say that's one of the only aspects where it has some
I will
issues with a
say though,
little bit.
like so the actual design of I don't know if you've noticed, but there are certain ways that certain things are color schemed to make you want to investigate them,
Hmm.
or go down the path, or do something. So something that's quite subtle is the when you first come to the first two set of doors. When you come to the first set of two doors, the one on the right is lit slightly differently to the one on the left. It's very subtle, but it's actually lit
Ah,
very, very slightly differently, and that would therefore create a distinction in your head. And then that, when coupled with the narrator saying you go to the one on your
yeah.
left, will then make you go, no, fuck that
Yeah,
shit.
and I also like how kind of brilliantly it like strings itself together.
Yeah,
Where you get a certain ending and then you can get to a different ending or something's different. That's one of the more interesting things. It's constantly changing little
yeah,
things that you're almost certainly going to notice, especially as you run through the game a
definitely.
couple of times. The broom closet being a notable example.
Yes.
Um,
The broom closet ending is amazing. That is
and
absolutely amazing.
despite the fact that the game sarcastically mocks you
Yeah.
for saying, "Oh, the broom closet ending was my favorite ending," it's like it is my favorite ending because it's hilarious. But
Yes.
regardless, it's that like it's taking advantage of subtle changes as you play through the game. And I think what you said kind of is an interesting point because when you consider it, in an environment as mundane as an office, you're more likely to notice those
Yeah.
small changes.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, I mean, overall, there's so much good in this title that it kind of amazes me. So
Yeah.
I know that there are a few like I'll get into like what certain sites said about it later when we talk impact, how it impacted the industry. But it is just astounding that some people don't like this game. And I can get that. Maybe like it just doesn't click with them in certain ways, but it amazes me that some people sort of talk about it in a way where they just sort of they gloss over so many points, and it seems like they don't necessarily they try to make it something it's not, and that is the worst thing you can do with the Stanley Parable.
Well, I mean, some people like Big Bang Theory, so
I do. We're so doing that podcast. There was a great response to it.
Well,
Honestly, there was a great response to. I'm looking at the fucking quick post now, and there's a
see,
great response.
viewers, if not viewers, well, I suppose you can view a page in front of you, you fucking asshole. But that was unnecessarily rude. I'm
Don't
sorry.
apologise to them.
Um,
Actually, wait, no, do apologise to them. Do it.
shut up.
Dance for me, pretty. Dance for me.
No, I'm not
No,
your monkey.
I'm British. You do what I say.
But anyway, listeners, basically, Limo is an evil monster who wants to kill me. And he basically is trying to subject me to making a podcast where we watch Big Bang
Not
Theory.
just you, by the
I'm
way.
I'm refusing. I have to put my foot down somewhere.
All of them, from
Um,
beginning to end.
and
From
no,
beginning
we're
to
never
end.
doing it. And now I'm gonna kill that idea right now. We're never doing it. Now,
We
moving
so
on.
are.
Stanley Parable. Yeah, I think
We so are.
the Stanley Parable is very dry. Well, yeah. It's a kind of dry, wry,
Yeah.
witty humor. Um, and this isn't to degrade you if you don't like that, or even if you don't think this game does it particularly well. Like, I want to be, as always, I want to be careful not to like say like if you have a different opinion, you're wrong. But um,
But you're wrong.
at you are, but that's not the point. The point is that ultimately, I can see its sense of humor not gelling with some people. Some people are just annoyed at certain voices, so I can even see that being something that just kind of turns people off. And then some people are probably just gonna
Yeah.
kind of look at it and be like, all you do is walk around and and get talked at. Where's the fun in that? And I can kind of see that, but I also feel like you're not really getting the full impact of what the game's trying to bring across to you if you look at it like that. Like, yeah, boiling it down to its most simplistic level.
Definitely.
It's a game where you walk around and do stuff. You can interact with a few items, but the interaction is mostly you moving around.
Yes.
And I guess I can see how some people wouldn't
Yeah.
find that.
I mean, if you know,
boring to me.
Yeah, if you're too dumb to understand the humor, I get that. It's fine.
But yeah, and I'm sure some people also look at it and think it's actually pretentious.
Yeah, that kind of annoys me. Some sort of like, this game actively tries not to be. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, and it's just like different people have different interpretations and views of certain topics.
Mm.
So it's like without hearing their specific criticisms, it's kind of hard to counter them because, I mean, I think the game is basically, I'd say it's basically flawless, not necessarily perfect, but aside from one issue, which I'll bring up, I think it's basically flawless. Like, I've spent 5 hours with the game.
I don't know how you can have how can you have an issue with the game that you haven't played? I don't understand this.
I don't know what I did to deserve
you haven't
this.
beaten.
I really don't.
I can't believe he hasn't beaten the Stanley Parable. Did you even get all the endings, bro? God, what's wrong with you?
Anyways, but yeah, it's like $15. I've gotten 5 hours of time with it. I think that could also be part of the problem. People could be looking at, people could look at that and say that's a terrible time to cost ratio, and it's like, I think what matters more than like length in a games department is how good is that length. If it's like as good as the Stanley Parable,
you gotta remember that.
I'd be fine with them charging $30 for the thing.
I mean, you got to remember, GM, is that you're in the position where you have to say that length doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, I know your penis is very small, Limo. I'm just trying to balm.
No, we're talking about you.
Okay.
We're talking about you here. You got to remember as well that I can edit this, so I can take that bit out and just leave the burn on you.
You can edit it out, but ultimately, you can't. You won't be able to edit it out.
You know what I can do?
Fragile ego.
I can edit
fragile. Ego.
I can edit out all of you. It's just have me talking to myself for a good hour or so.
You can call it the Narcissism Podcast. It's like
I'll release two versions.
Gosh,
It's great.
I still haven't come up with a name for this fucking thing yet. I have some ideas, but
fucking.
You know what? Actually, when we
put out
the first one, let's put out a call to ask for titles, and then reject all of them because they'll all be either jokes,
definitely.
not quite right, or terrible.
2 bum buddies. That's my personal one. A Brit and a Yank.
Yeah, a Yank and Brit.
Whoa, you don't need to put Americans didn't come first though, so.
well, I mean, yeah, but it just sounds funnier, like word wise.
Yank.
I like what a Brit Yank. Okay,
Yank.
actually, no, that works.
Yank a Brit. Anywho, so let's get on to this negative that you have, because my only negative would be with the game overall is maybe the fact that it just I feel like maybe to some people at least, and this isn't necessarily how I think, but I can see why other people would think that maybe after you've seen 3 or 4 endings, you kind of get the gist of what it's going for, and therefore it doesn't have the same impact when you reach something else that's kooky. So I can see when people think that, but
yeah, I personally don't really agree with that. I mean,
how comes?
Obviously you don't feel that way, but like, for myself, I feel like each of the endings does something weird and different enough to kind of justify itself. And I think a lot of fun is unraveling all those endings.
Yep.
Like, none of them are really going to ever hit as hard as your very first one. The very first time that something really weird happens and throws you off completely. Yep. But at the same time, I think the game mostly keeps itself in a good position. Ultimately, it kind of kept me laughing and entertained throughout all the other endings, I want to get all the endings. I wanted to figure out all the shit that was going on,
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Well, what about your one then? What's your fucking negative? Fucking just shoot me down. It's like, Limo, make a point. No, I'm just going to shoot you down. It's great. Just lead them and shoot.
This is the fragile eagle thing. Eagle.
Fragile eagle. Fragile eagle. You said it twice as well. You tried to fucking correct yourself and you still said it. Oh god, that's the level of professionalism I have to work with. That's just what I've got to do. It's fine. That's why I edit this. What's your fucking negative then? Come on, boy. What's yours?
Okay, I would say if there's one thing I don't like, and it's a really minor little nitpick,
Mm,
the graphics in certain scenes and endings could be a little bit better, I
yep.
suppose. There's one ending in particular with human models in it, and they both look pretty bad. And I know that graphical fidelity isn't the point, but it's a little bit of
Yeah.
it's a little bit annoying. It's like a tiny bit annoying. It's like you have a little crumb or something on your foot. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's
Hmm.
kind of a little bit annoying. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm reaching for things to criticize the game on here,
It's hard to
but
criticize a game that kind of criticizes itself.
yeah, and
It's
it's
sort of
really
hard to
hard to
do.
criticize a game that's so self-aware
Meta.
and so tight, compact, and perfect. Well, yeah, no, actually, perfectly
It's
executed.
that's the thing is it is one of those games that kind of has an idea, it executes it perfectly, and it doesn't try to do anything else but execute the idea it had perfectly. So it is, as you say, hard to criticize things because of the fact that at the end of the day, it's
It
basically
sets out, yeah, it achieves what it sets out to fucking do perfectly.
yeah. There's nothing much that I can really like I say other than that, and I can see why people would think like both of those things. Because of course, as you say, this like as I said earlier as well, the Source engine. There's only so much you can do with it. It's very. This one was kind of like one of the. It was like only the first one, I think. It's
Yeah,
something
and the
like
thing
that.
is, it's like neither of those are killers, and neither of those impact the entire
No,
experience. It
definitely
does
not.
rely on visuals, but the visuals are mostly buildings and hallways and stuff, so it's not a huge issue. I will say that one of the other obvious criticisms is there's no killing anything.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no real gameplay. There's no
So
happy love story.
it's automatically a 1 out of 10.
I guess you could consider it a love
I mean,
story between the narrator and
I mean,
Stanley in some of the
you would
endings.
attach yourself to that, wouldn't you? Because you've got nobody else in your life to love other than two fictional
Wow,
characters. I
jeez
don't.
Louise. Limo's not. Now he's going below the belt.
I don't need to go below the belt. Length doesn't matter. Remember.
And he bites. He's terrible at it. It's fucking disgraceful to his entire race of
My
people.
entire race of people. You disgust me. Let's get back on track with the Stanley parable. Fool. Stop going on
And
tangents. So, with those negatives in hand, of course, let's get
and,
back to the
and they're
substitution.
tiny.
They are minuscule. Let's talk impact and the fact that I do think that this was probably the first
Um,
game to really open the floodgates to these walking simulators games.
I don't know if I'd necessarily say it was actually.
Really?
I
Well,
mean,
disagreeing with the lead host again. I'd like to see this.
oh my gosh, shut the fuck up. Okay, I think okay. I want to double check one thing before I continue. Cause I think what I would consider. Oh, this game has far too high of scores, dear lord. Uh,
It's good to hear that GM is so underprepared. He's so
Fuck's sakes.
underprepared.
Yeah, I wanted to know when the game I wanted to know when the game re-released.
Re-released. Oh, it came out in 2012.
Yes. Okay, yeah, you got it.
That's all you
I
had.
would say
He just had to ask. That's all you had to do, GM. You just had to ask me because I'm prepared and I'm
shut
ready
up.
for this podcast, and you're
That came
evidently
out
not.
of nowhere, you motherfucker. Just wait until the BioShock Infinite podcast. You're gonna be like a gasping trout in the middle of a desert, and I'm gonna be the mantis shrimp patrolling the oceans of hate.
Oh god, it's just the way. It's so fun.
Oh gosh.
It's just the fucking way you knew that I knew when it was out as well, but you still stubbornly went full steam ahead. I was like, no, I will fucking search this. I'm not going to ask his opinion. No, I know this. I know
Well, hey,
this shit.
you didn't know what game it was. Besides, I kind of wanted to see if like anything else popped up.
Oh fuck me.
To be like, okay, so when did one question actually, when did the Stanley Parable
What the mod?
the Stanley Parable original mod,
That
what
came
year did
out
that
in
come out?
that came out in 2011. I think it was June or July 2011.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
I would say that I would consider Dear Esther to be
For good or for bad.
what?
For good and for bad.
Yeah, someday we're gonna talk about that fucking game and tear it apart. But
Do we have to? Because it's not really well received.
yeah,
So,
yeah, no. Well, IGN liked it, but that's kind of like saying the sky is blue.
and so IGN
Um,
also liked quite a few games. So don't get me started on IGN's scoring system. I've got a bone to pick.
yeah, yeah. Unlike their employees.
No, dude, I've got to fucking
Oh,
edit
okay.
this.
Anyways, regardless,
Dude, you
um,
can't say that
he's
shit.
gonna
No,
leave that in
you
because he's
can't
gonna
say that.
forget.
There's some stuff I can't allow.
Anyways,
Okay.
dear Esther, dear Esther, I think dear Esther was actually kind of the one that opened the floodgates for walking simulators because before it there were some games that were close to walking simulators, but
Hmm.
to me, dear Esther seemed like the first game that kind of exemplified everything that everyone thinks a walking simulator is. And it was
Mm.
super fucking pretentious too. And that just made people dislike it even more, which kind of hurt the genre to some degree. And I think
Hmm.
it's telling that when you look at everybody's gone to the Rapture, people
Yeah,
remember the Stanley Parable and other walking simulators and stuff, and people have completely moved on past the Chinese room.
definitely. The Chinese room haven't kept up with the times when it comes to these sort of things. I think, as you say, I think the Stanley Parable showed everyone how to do it, but better.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I think it's interesting that they released in a similar window. Um,
yes.
I don't. I actually am. I would be curious if there's any interlap, but I'm guessing there's not. It's just a huge fucking coincidence. But I'd guess that. I mean, again, I'd have to say that neither of them were. I doubt either of them were like even close to the original walking simulator. Um, but at the same time, I think the Stanley Parable, even in mod form, you heard about
Yeah,
it. Not as much as when the full game came out, but you heard about it. And then with Dear Esther, you couldn't escape from it for a while. Um,
yeah, it was everywhere.
and it just to me was a game that I don't even know if I'd fucking call it a game, to be honest. Like that's about where I kind of draw the line because it demands nothing from you, but it
Yeah,
also doesn't even try to invest you in itself.
yeah. I think so. I had this discussion with a gentleman the other day, and this was just actually a part of just like a couple of hours ago on Destructoid, and he mentioned how taking the enemies out of Soma makes it not a game, and therefore they should have just made a TV series or a short film out of it. And I'm kind of like, it doesn't work outside of that. I think the Arresta would work outside of that, but Soma works because it's the idea of existentialism. It works because you are playing that character in first person and you are consistently the one in control. But the entire point of the game is the lack of control. It's the lack of being, the lack of existing. The Stanley Parable wouldn't work as a short film because it consistently calls into like it calls into question your own idea of choice. It's Dear Esther, on the other
Yeah,
hand, literally is a story being dictated to you as you walk
yeah.
around.
It's again, it's actually yeah. Getting more into it, I think, kind of help explains the Stanley Parable in a way because I mean, fucking just it's the difference between a game that actually tries to. Well, actually, we can even bring up Gone Home as an example of a walking simulator that's done right.
We will talk about that definitely.
We will, but needless to say, it's like the Stanley. Well, okay, yeah, just bear with me. I know some of you are gonna like swallow your fucking shins, but it's like the Stanley Parable because it engages you, it invests you in the world, and it involves you in the world. The Stanley Parable is about Stanley, but it's about the player too. The
Mm,
game is aware that you're playing it. It's a very meta
yes.
game, but not in a fucking cringy or obnoxious way. And it doesn't completely like hold you by the nose. Like
Yeah.
you can only go along predetermined pathways, but that's kind of part of the point too. You can only go along predetermined pathways. You can only follow the paths the developers have made for you. That's part of the entire statement that's being made about game design in the fucking Stanley
Yeah.
Parable, and it does it in such a masterful way that it's still engaging, even though the game does several times wink at you and let you in on the
Mm.
joke. It's such a fucking masterclass of.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just, you know,
Of like game design and writing. He just likes to just orgasm over this
you
game.
know,
He
it's like,
loves it. He loves this fucking game.
I like the game. I love the game even. And it's just interesting to talk about it because it's making me appreciate it even more.
It just, I think as well, this is another one that I know for a fact, and this is something that I didn't know, but this game is is on a list of must-play games for video game students, people studying at schools, because I have quite a few friends who study video game programming and design, as well as video game narratives, and their narrative project is to study both this, the beginner's guide, as well as a couple of I had like they gave me a fucking list. I don't know whether or not I can find the text, but they gave me a fucking list of shit. And but I know that this is on there, and that goes for almost everyone. And I think it's because of just how simple the game design is, how simple the idea is, but everything about it works so well that it becomes, as you say, a masterclass of video game making.
And I think to some degree that's kind of why it's so great. It
Mm,
cuts out all the fat. It cuts out all the
yeah,
bullshit.
basically.
Just such a it's pure
Yeah.
distilled game in
But
its
don't get me
way.
wrong. I like myself some AAA, AAA video gaming. I like myself some premium cut steak right there. But at the end of the day, sometimes I also like to sit down and enjoy a really nice soup. And that is exactly what the
Yeah,
Stanley Parable is. It's a real fucking good soup and doesn't need to do anything else but be soup. I don't know how
yeah,
I
and
got onto this food analogy, but regardless, I'm sticking with it. It's a real nice soup. It's got a tasty milkshake next to it. There's no fucking add-ons. It's just what it is. You take it for what it is, and it's amazing.
I'd
And it
say
tastes so fucking
it's
good
like a
going down.
great. It's what's a good comparison? It's like
You
a
don't need to
big
do.
old
You don't need to do that.
sandwich full of a bunch of stuff. You know.
You don't need to do metaphors, mate. You don't need to do metaphors. It's fine. It's okay. You couldn't even play the game. It's fine. It's okay. You don't need to worry about metaphors.
But yeah, it's basically the difference between well, just a game that's huge and packed with a bunch of stuff and has a good
Mm,
story and is entertaining in its way and is enjoyable, but doesn't really do anything with the medium or examine it at all. It's the difference between
yeah.
that and then a smaller game that has no real fat to it, is
Mm,
very streamlined in a good way, knows exactly what it's doing, and does it basically almost flawlessly. And
yeah.
just it's such a fascinating look at games, agency, and all that shit without being
Yep.
pretentious too. That's
Yeah.
such an
That's probably the
amazing
best.
accomplishment.
That's probably the best thing about it as well. And I feel like as a game itself, people who want to make these sort of games, as I said before, should definitely study it. They should play it as much as they can and study every little fucking detail about it and how it does it
Oh,
because it is just
I
so
definitely think
well
so.
done.
I definitely think. I mean,
Um,
if you're learning to make games, I think the Stanley Parable is a great game to just kind of play and chew on.
yeah,
You know?
definitely, definitely. So, I'm going to talk about a couple of the reviews now. We did
Hmm.
this last time round, and once again, going to reiterate: this isn't us judging someone else's opinion. This is us discussing the opinion and whether or not it still holds up. Personally, because the game is, fairly, it's only a couple of years older than Limbo. So because it's kind of recent, I think it is,
Yeah.
talking about whether or not a review still holds up is kind of um, harder to do, but it's still interesting to do nonetheless because it's also nice to see whether or not certain games have the staying power. Because media itself allows us to have split-second reactions to things now, and everything is immediate. And that's happened to quite a few games this year that I think will over the grand test of time will not hold up as well. Um,
Yeah, certain games just tend to rot
yeah,
quicker, and certain games age like fine wine, where you grow to appreciate
fucking
them
yeah.
even a couple of years down the
Like, I
line.
mean,
You
look
know,
at
it's
Doom.
just the
Doom
way some games
2016
are.
is the perfect example for that, right? That didn't even receive. Wait, hold on. So Doom 2016, I believe, didn't even receive one 10 out of 10. Um, and yeah, you speak to people who've played it, You speak to people who are fans of the franchise. You speak to people who have played it since then and play it today, and it is regarded by many people to be the best game of 2016.
Yeah,
Tell a lie. Sorry,
by the
tell a
way,
lie.
we are going to get onto that game eventually,
One day.
and you're not going to be able to get me to shut the fuck up
I'm
about it because I'm one of those people.
I'm really tell a lie. I apologise. I told a lie. There are four 10 out of 10 reviews, and oh my god. Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to count 3 because one of them is Brash Games, and he's a trash person. 4. There are 4 actually. Tell a lie. There are 4. Brash was the 5th, but I'm not counting that. But then, of course, places. We'll go on to that one day. But for the Stanley Parable, it received a shitload of praise, rightfully so. So one of them, for example, is where so many games that aspire to be more than games end up less than any form of art. The Stanley Parable strives and then succeeds to be every game ever created. Even so, holding the game to the standards of any other title is simply not going to be correct. And that actually does sum it up quite well. I will say that, like, straight off the bat. Trying to hold it to the standards of other video games is hard to do because of what it does as a game
The
itself.
statement itself might be a bit pretentious, but I kind of understand what he's driving at, so I get it. It's just it's said in a little bit of a. You could kind of boil that statement down a little bit to be a little bit more, effective. But regardless, it's definitely it's a game that's kind of hard to compare to other games because of what it's doing, which is namely discussing and critiquing games in a way. All right, who's that from?
So that was from Jim.
Oh.
That was Destructoid's review, which I still think. Have you actually read that review?
You know what? I don't think I have. I think that might have been. Well, no. What year did this game release again?
Right. So it released in. Hold on. It says here.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh no! Tell a lie. I've been told I've been wrong the entire time. I've been looking at the wrong fucking release date. It came out in October 17th, 2013. It was only approved to go onto the Steam Greenlight store in 2012. So that's why I was kind of like, Jesus Christ! They turned the entire game around in just the space of a year. But no, 2013.
Yeah, all right. I don't know that I saw that one. I think I kind of mainly came onto the site in terms of like really interacting with it.
I see. Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I remember reading that review and then playing it immediately afterwards, and his review is actually kind of perfect. It's literally 4. No, it's 3 paragraphs and then 2 lines.
Oh yeah, you know what? That does.
As he says here, it's
also going forward. Could you post the text in the chat? Sometimes it makes it a little easier for my brain to chew on things so I can read them.
So actually, like he says here, he actually says perhaps its closest cousin would be Dear Esther, but where Dear Esther fails, wastes the form of interactive entertainment, Stanley Parable uses and then subverts it. And
that's fucking basically perfect.
Fucking bang on is what that is. So I'm going to choose another one. So we've got you'll feel bizarre motivation to uncover each of more than a dozen endings, even when the game is openly mocking you for doing so. The insults speak to a larger truth and may make you question what it means to play games at all. This introspection, however, will have you laughing the entire time. And that's, you know what, a little bit less. Yeah. Yeah.
So you kind of cut out. What was that?
Okay, so I'll say the entire thing again. So, you don't
need to read the entire thing again.
Okay, that's fine. I just said that's kind of perfect. That's actually very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Game Trailers.
Pretty decent statement about it. I'd say it kind of nails the idea.
That was Game Trailers. R.I.P. This one, which is quite, this me being a film lover. The Stanley Parable is the being John Malkovich of video games, a complex and shapeless digital creature that we will play over and over again, sometimes staying with raised eyebrows and a sea of questions, with the only certainty of having experienced something as much surreal as poetic.
Kind of wandering into pretentious territory there, but haven't watched John Malkovich, so I can't really offer
John
much of an
Malkovich is real
opinion of
fucking
that
good.
statement.
I highly recommend being John Malkovich because it's just so fucking weird.
Well, I'm sure. That title is amusing as a statement in a normal sentence. Anyways, yeah. Just that might be wandering a little bit more towards pretentiousness, which, given the game itself, I think might kind of be missing part of the point. But whatever. That's just
That was that was every iot. But yeah, no, that I mean, how would you know what the fuck's pretentious, man? You didn't even play the fucking game.
oh my gosh. If
How would you
I was able
how would you know?
to fake this entire review, I think I'm basically the Stanley Parable of
That's
people
really
then.
not true because the Stanley Parable is good and you are not. So
Oh, you wound me. You wound me.
damn right I did.
Anyways,
Uh,
but
one
yeah,
more.
that's interesting.
I'll do one more, and all its different plot lines and personalities overlap and combine to create something that's intriguingly opaque, but always entertaining and genuinely funny. Whatever it is, it's worth playing. And you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? I agree. That was IGN, and I actually agree with them. It makes a
Wow,
fucking change.
that's shocking.
I know, right? Well, I say this. The thing is, IGN, and I shit on them a lot, rightfully so, but that's because they are kind of like they are the corporate reviewer. That's what I like to say. They're not.
I feel like they're a bunch of gray sludge that kind of covers up a lot of talent,
Yeah, that's the thing.
and it's like you'll see certain talented individuals get their start there and then crawl
Yeah,
out and do their own thing.
yeah, and that's not to say like
But
I don't I dislike IGN the concept. I don't like IGN
I
the people who work there. That's the thing.
yeah, no, it's not necessarily. Well, it's not even necessarily people who work there. It's a machine,
Yeah,
and it's not like a repulsive, disgusting mass of mucus
yeah,
like Polygon, or where it's like where the problem isn't necessarily that. Where the problem is that it's like is it of a different nature,
Polygon have some good
and where I
articles
actively
occasionally.
dislike them.
Polygon have some good articles occasionally. Like so do Kotaku as well.
They can
Actually,
they Yeah, and that's my thing. It's like, okay, so IGN is a big corporate monster. It's a gray blob of mediocrity that very rarely puts out points of good or bad. And that's kind of
mm,
why it's repugnant, because it's so corporate. Whereas,
yeah,
so I don't even really care about it. It's like we all joke about IGN, but it's like no one really talks about IGN aside from joking about that. And
yeah,
then you look at some place like Polygon or Kotaku, where it's like Kotaku especially. I want to like the site more, but then they write some inflammatory piece of shit, and
yeah,
it's just like fucking
yeah. No.
abysmal. But
But
that
when it
is part of
when
the
it came,
nature of
yeah,
being a site that's more outspoken and willing to just say whatever the fuck they want.
yeah, yeah. And on this occasion, I will say that I definitely agree with them on that. It is a game that you do kind of have to play, especially if you're interested in video games. If you're
Yeah,
interested
I
in
apologize
how
for
to
getting
make.
off on that tangent.
It's okay. I can
Yeah,
drag us
no,
back. Drag us back. It's fine. It's okay. That's what I live for. It's how I do things. When it comes to like making games or interested in video games, the Stanley Parable is just something that you do have to play, much as IGN says.
yeah,
And yeah,
I
it is a masterclass in video game making. It really is.
I think if you've gotten this far, we haven't spoiled too many specific
No,
plot lines and
I
endings.
tried to avoid it because there is a lot of stuff in there that's because the thing is even I could talk at length about the Stanley Parable for 2 hours and still not touch on every detail about it.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
if
you
you
know,
have listened to this point and you didn't really heed my warning, I'm hopeful that we've convinced you to try it.
yeah, I
It's really a
certainly hope so.
game that I think is worth your time.
It's just
It
I
just,
don't see why you wouldn't have played it. To be honest with you, because
I
it's just
mean,
that damn good.
people just miss it. And, maybe you miss Stanley Parable. Maybe you were in a coma
Like
for
GM did.
14 years, like a BJ Blazkowicz.
Just remember
Um,
that GM didn't actually play the game for this, so he's also remembering things a little fuzzily. So if he says something, don't listen to him too much, but you can trust me on this. And
We're gonna need to
I
get
say
another
play.
person in here to beat you up a bit, put you back in your
That's not
place, you
that's not
limey
true. See,
scum.
let's see what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to twist them into being another bully for you, and then what's going to happen is
It's gonna be
we're going to phase you out once we hit it big. We're going to
no. See,
phase you
you're never
out,
gonna
and then I
phase me
become the
out.
sole owner.
You're never gonna phase me out because it's gonna be like Kenny versus Spenny versus Kenny, where there's just two terrible people torturing one. Well, I wouldn't put myself at the same level as Spenny, but the point is, there's one just like relatively normal, not horrible person
Relatively.
being tortured by two monsters.
I mean, you know.
That'll be the entire show concept. I mean, you can't even make it through an entire episode
So
without mocking me.
I mean, you're so
You're
easy to mock, though. I mean, you're terrible at video games, but want to make a video game podcast. It's like it's just amazing. It's such an
I want
oxymoron.
to let you all know how much of a fucking effort this thing was to get off the ground and how I had to keep fucking pushing it. Because I had set up a time and Limo would say, yeah, let's do it. And then he'd fall off the face of the earth because he dropped a door on his foot or
Whoa!
he caught the Black
I can
Plague or
totally,
he fucking walked into a
I can
door.
totally send you the picture of my nailless toe now. By the way, like
Oh, no, 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 no,
there's
no,
no
no.
nail anymore on my big toe on my right foot.
Is it,
Zilch, zero.
is it going to grow back
No,
or did
no,
you
no,
kill
no,
the
no,
nail
no. You
bed?
kill the nail bed, and there is no. It's just hard skin there now. It's great.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it's kind of gross looking, but it's cool though. It doesn't hurt anything
Yeah,
though.
but it's alright.
That's the best thing. When it started ingrowing, I was like, you know what? Fuck that. Just take it out and get rid of it. Because it hurt to like. It even hurt to put a sock on. It hurt to have a duvet on top of it. It hurt to have anything
What's a
near it. It hurt
duvet?
to. A duvet is a quilt. It's a
Oh,
cover.
okay.
It's a bed sheet. Um, so yeah, no. So I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Just take the whole thing. That's a really weird tension. Let's get back to the one thing that I need to ask you, and this is going to be like the shortest fucking answer ever, and this is just: do you think this game is art?
I think it transcends art.
Oh, fucking, you were talking about pretentiousness, dude. Holy fuck! Holy shit!
Okay. Being serious,
Holy shit!
I
That
think
was
this
so
game
pretentious.
is a masterful artistic expression, like what it is to be. Well, I mean, like fucking game design at its core. It's so masterful at dissecting what games are, and there's so much obvious talent and writing skill. And I mean, like, I literally think that it'd be fine to put this in like a museum or something. I legitimately think it would be awesome to see this in a museum where people can just walk in and play it and get a feel for game design. It's that just razor sharp good, in my
It
opinion.
I'm of the opinion that it is absolutely amazing. You pretentious motherfucker. I personally
Uh,
think it is one of the best narrative experiences I think I've ever played. It is right up there
yeah.
with Spec Ops: The Line. It is in terms
Yeah.
of subversion. It's right up there with like Silent Hill 2 in terms of in terms of like the design of the game, how it takes something so simple and turns it into something so memorable. It's right up there with all my other favourite games, and yet it's so simple, so short, so cheap, so it makes video
Yeah.
games look easy to make. It does it so
It's
effortlessly
amazing.
that it astounds
Yeah.
me that it took work to make it work.
It
Yeah,
exists even. It's fucking weird to think about something this just really
yeah.
incredible being
I
a thing. And I'm sure there's a
I would
movie
say,
equivalent, but it's just it's incredible to
yeah,
think about
definitely. I would say
because it is so uniquely of
yeah,
its
I'd say the
genre.
thing that's actually closest to it,
And
and
I just
I've
think
said this about I
it's
said it about Blade Runner
yeah.
2049. I'm amazed it exists. Um, I'm amazed that someone sat down and was allowed to make this game.
Yeah.
Um, I'm amazed that this game gained traction, gained praise, and I think it's
Mhm.
because it came around at the right time, much like Blade Runner did. Even though it didn't make money, Stanley Parable made a
Yeah.
shitload of money, but but unlike Blade Runner, where Blade Runner didn't make much money, Blade Runner came around a time where sci-fi movies meant action. Sci-fi meant mindless plot, meant no smarts
Yeah.
whatsoever, meant no depth, meant no thematic quality. And Blade Runner came around a time where that is the thing, and it delivered on all those points, including, and it has some really good action scenes as well, might I add. Like, it has some really solid action scenes,
2049 or
but
20 to that.
it
What is it?
delivers
2007? Or is it
2049.
just called Blade Runner? No, it's just called Blade Runner, isn't it?
It's called Blade Runner. It's called Blade
Yeah.
Runner
20. Oh
2049.
yeah. 2049
Um,
is yeah. It's we should. I almost feel like we
yeah,
should do an
it came
entire
out
thing
around.
about that sometime. I think it'd be interesting.
But yeah, no. So, and much like that, and I'm just
Yeah.
using that as an example. I'm sure there are other examples, but it's the one that's stuck in my mind this year. It's my favourite film of the year so far, and Stanley Parable of that year is one of my favourite games of that year, because it came around a time where there were so many
Yeah.
bloated um, games that were just not worth my time.
It's
It's just so good. It's just
it's just
so
it was
good.
such a raw, refined, and those words contradict, but it was yeah. It's just an amazing game, and it's honestly weird to think about it just kind of fucking existing. As dumb as that sounds, it's
It's
just
weird to
such
think about it.
a beautiful
It's weird to
thing.
think about a time. It's weird to think that there was a time before it existed. If you know what I mean. It's weird to think that there was a time before the Stanley Parable, because the Stanley Parable itself redefined what it meant to be a walking
Yeah.
simulator. In terms of that is where the bar is, and if you're not as good as that, then what's the point of me playing you? You know, there are other games that kind of. So a lot of people don't like the Vanishing of Ethan Carter. I quite like it. I
Yeah.
think it's good.
I
It's just not as good as
I
the
think
Stanley
the thing
Parable.
is
You know,
it's
very
not
few
only
games
is
are.
it great for just video games, but it's also kind of a great reproach to walking simulators in general.
Yes,
Because I
definitely.
mean, I'm not saying there's you can do walking simulators right. Like I know it gets so much shit, which I don't think is entirely deserved. I think people just really project onto it. Um, but
Mm.
Gone Home, which we'll talk about at some point, uh, I just think that's a good example of a walking
Journey's one.
simulator. And Stanley Parable is obviously better, but at the same time, I feel like Gone
Yeah,
Home has some similar traits to it because, well, again, it's about engaging you. That's the difference.
I'd argue that the
Yeah.
beginner's guide is another one. As is, I'd say Journey as well is another one.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Journey's a little
Although
bit
Journey has some more
different. I
gameplay
feel
to
like
it.
it's far enough off that I wouldn't necessarily put it in the same category as Walking Simulator, but
I see,
obviously the lines
yeah.
between certain genres are pretty damn fluid, so you could make a good argument either way.
I'd say another really good one. I don't know if you've played it, but Firewatch is real good. Um,
I haven't played it, no.
Highly recommend it. A lot of people don't like the ending. The problem I have with people who don't like the endings, they seem to have missed it. The entire point of the game is mundanity always wins. Like, you can build something up in your, like, the entire point of the characters. They go through something. They're like, do you ever? There's a discussion in the game where they're talking about, how they wanted to do all these things, and sometimes life just doesn't happen that way. And then the entire game builds up to this climax, and the climax isn't what you expect it to be. And then everyone's kind of like, oh, that deflates it. And it's like, well, no, the entire point of the game is that. Like, you've sort of, it's just gone right over your head. I understand it's disappointing, but it's the point of the game. And, sometimes that clicks with certain people, sometimes it doesn't. Much like, certain things with the Stanley Parable might click with some, and they might not click with others. But,
Yeah,
the
but to
Stanley
sum up,
Parable really is just
okay,
that
go ahead.
fucking good. It really is that
Yeah.
good, and it deserves to have its place as an art form. Whereas, like last week, I keep on saying that. It's because I was working on the edit all last week. Um,
Yeah.
it is a unlike Limbo. I don't say I
Mm.
while I say Limbo is an art form for certain reasons, the Stanley Parable is artistic from top to bottom, but not in a pretentious way, because it's so you can get so many things from it. You can interpret it in so many ways, and that's what else could be art other than that, you know?
I feel like it's kind of comparing a pretty good painting by a very well-known artist to the Mona
Yeah,
Lisa or the Starry Night.
definitely.
It's like it the other painting will inherently be diminished by the comparison. I can't see what you're saying. Regardless, But yeah, to sum up, game's a good one, basically flawless. It's art. I'm pretty sure I speak for both of us on that one.
Definitely, definitely, he does indeed. Just for once, I'm going to allow him to speak for the two of us.
This is the British style. They break you down and make you hate them, and then you
That's
conquer most of Europe.
that's it. That's exactly where I'm going to end that edit. That's exactly where I'm going to end that edit. I'm going to end it with I'm going to end it with that. I'm going to end it with your sigh. I'm going to end that section with your sigh because
Yeah.
that just speaks volumes. That was really good. But no, yeah. So anyway, that's that's the Stanley Parable for you guys. We're going to have a talk about whether or not like what game
Yeah,
to
I
do
feel like we
next.
probably shouldn't discuss it here because
We're
might
also
lock us
gonna,
in if we decide to change our minds.
no, we're not going to. Yeah, we're going to have a look, see, because if you don't want to do another indie game, we're going to have to look at like a linear
I feel like
AAA game.
eventually the time will come when we move on to a bigger game. I think we should just look at the games
Yeah,
and just kind of let what interests
yeah,
us
just have a look at the
determine
games
it. But
list.
I
Pretty
think we should
much.
hold off on something like the beginner's guide because we just covered a walking simulator.
Yes, yes. In which case, then we'll have a look see in a bit. Also, thank you so much if you've listened to this one. Like seriously, like you have my full appreciation. I don't know about GM, but whatever.
Yeah, seriously. I said this at the end of the first episode as well, both times that we recorded it, because Limo fucked up. But I feel like I should just really say, if you've listened this far and you're the second podcast in, even if this is your first podcast of ours, we really appreciate it. This is really fun. This is a fun activity for us, and I'm glad that I'm happy at the idea that people get to share in on this with us, and hopefully we can have some cool discussions in the comments and shit. But yeah, thanks.
And not just that as well, but like if you want to come on as a guest, just let us know because we'll put you on
Unless
the
you suck, and
shortlist.
in which case we'll tell you to fuck
I mean,
off.
unless you've got like some really contentious opinions that GM doesn't like, in which case he'll just rule you out entirely because he doesn't like being contended with. He just runs away from any sort of like confrontation, just how he does it. But when it comes, but I'll let you on. It's fine. What we can do is we can have a secret podcast, me and you, like whoever you are. If you want to come on, I'll do the
It'll
super
just
one.
be a It'll just be a supercut of like clips of me drinking things, sighing, and belching, while Limo and whoever we'll call him Judas Benedict Arnold,
We'll call him the person who chose Catwoman.
Brutus.
That's what we'll do.
I didn't pick Catwoman.
No, not you.
He knows who he is,
knows.
and he's listening to it.
He
yes,
is.
Pixie.
He has no choice
picked
but to listen to.
Catwoman.
But
All right, we're rambling now.
But no. But seriously, thank you so much for listening. If this is your second, if you're listening to this one and the last one, and by the way, I'm pretty sure that this one went better than the first one. But also,
yeah, I do too.
But also, if you're listening to this one after listening to the shambles that was the first one, then I appreciate that so much. We're going to look for a third person as well. If you're interested, just let us know. That's absolutely fine. But hopefully, by the third one that we record, we should have already chosen our third person. But
and just as a heads up, the way that's going to work at first, unless we find someone who kind of just slots in perfectly, is we're going to be talking about different games, and we'll poke around. And if you're interested in talking about one, you have a lot of thoughts on it, maybe we'll toss you on.
Yeah,
no guarantees, but
it's one of those things that we definitely are looking into. We're looking into having guests on. So if you want to be a guest, just let us know, and we will get on to making. I'm going to start making a short list of people that I want on, and start asking people. I'm also going to be. So I'll probably tailor it to specific games. So if there's a game that you actually want to discuss with us that you quite like the idea of discussing, and you feel passionate about yourself, then like you just say I want that one, and then whenever we get around to talk about that one, you will get the call, and we will be bringing you on. As for our regular, we will choose that person from a couple of trials. Not necessarily like we're not going to record it. We'll just simply just get into a chat room. We'll just talk about whatever the fuck, any video games you like. We'll probably choose one maybe to discuss because that's how the podcast works. So we'll probably discuss one game at length for about an hour or so. Go through the motions that we would here. And then, just see how we all get on. Just see how we get on together, see whether or not there's a rapport, see whether we click. Because at the end of the day, that's what counts the most. And that's what we need for a third person on this podcast.
That's in the fucking future times.
But that is,
we'll We'll try and get the first fucking podcast out before
I
we
know, I know.
uh,
Just
get too
school
far into
things.
that.
Leave me be. But anyway, thank you again, and hopefully you enjoyed. And we will leave you now, and hopefully you enjoy Alpha's music. Also, yes, accreditation to Alpha because Alpha Deus is the one who made the intro and the outro, and we're using his music with his permission, of course. And it's good. It's good shit. So if you want any more of him, check him out on YouTube. He goes under the name Alpha Deus. Make sure you do that. So plug that away. And
Yeah. And if you have any suggestions or anything, like games or just general formatting or sound stuff, go ahead and toss us a comment. We're kind of new at this, so
yeah, definitely do so.
advice is welcome.
Yeah, just FYI, that advice might be taken on by like the fourth or fifth podcast, not the third, because we don't know when. Yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna be like you're gonna be building a building across from a boat going down a
basically,
swift river.
basically, yes.
Unfortunately,
But anyway,
but yeah, thanks for listening.
thanks very much for listening. I've been the Limo
Good
Maker.
luck and Godspeed. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
I'll come up with
Yeah,
something. Bye.